The wind swept across the sand, blowing the dust away and revealing more clearly the two figures collapsed on the ground, and Reuben's heart sank. A towering Apache woman, nearly 7 feet tall, with bulging muscles, lay on her side. Half her body was covered in swollen, purple bruises. Her left shoulder had a deep tear, as if someone had yanked and tormented it violently. Though she looked powerful, her entire body was now trembling faintly, her breathing heavy and ragged, like the final growl of a beast cornered with no way out. Beside her was a small girl, curled up like a dried leaf. Her lips were cracked and split, and her eyes fluttered, barely able to open. They were not just exhausted anymore, they were truly dying. Reuben stood frozen. Helping an Apache was asking for trouble. If the patrol found out, he could be hanged for harboring savages. But when he looked at the large body shaking in pain and the child gasping for air, he knew. If he did not help, both of them would surely die. Without a moment's hesitation, Reuben dropped to his knees. He lifted the little girl first. She was light as air. She let out a faint moan, so weak it tightened something deep in Reuben's chest. Then he turned to the mother. Her body was as heavy as a fallen tree, but Reuben gritted his teeth, slipped his arms under her shoulders, and hoisted her onto the wagon. Every wound on her body seemed to tell a cruel story he dared not imagine. "Hold on, I am taking you both home," he whispered. And in that desert, blazing hot like a furnace, Reuben had no idea he was about to step into the greatest turning point of his life. Reuben almost had to shoulder the door open. The 2 water barrels, a dying child, and Nakana's massive frame weighed down the small wagon so heavily that every step had become a burden. He laid Tala on the bed first. The little girl burned like a coal. Her lips were turning blue. Just 1 more hour, and she might not have made it. Reuben dashed back and forth like a man gone mad. Boiling water, preparing cold towels, grinding healing herbs, scooping water into a tin can, and letting tiny drops trickle between the girl's lips. Tala's breathing came in short, broken gasps. At times, her chest would stop for a beat, and Reuben's blood would run cold. He had once watched his wife die from fever, and every time Tala's small body convulsed, it felt like a fresh wound tearing open in his heart. In the corner of the room, Nakana lay stretched out on the floor, her breath heavy like rolling stones. Despite her enormous, powerful body, the torn bruises covering her made it nearly impossible for her to move. But those deep black eyes never left Reuben. She said nothing. She only watched, and endured the pain in silence. On the first night, Tala mumbled in a feverish haze, calling out for her mother. On the second night, the convulsions began, and her breath came in sharper, more fragile fragments. Reuben did not sleep a single second. Every time Tala trembled violently, he held her close, keeping that tiny body from hurting itself. On the third night, desert winds howled through the cracks in the door. The fire in the stove flickered, threatening to die. Finally, Tala's breathing began to steady. Her fever dropped, slowly. When Reuben laid his hand on her forehead and felt the warmth recede, he let out a long, trembling sigh. It was then that Nakana pushed herself up. Her body shook with pain, but she forced herself to stand. Her shadow filled nearly half the room. Reuben looked up and saw those eyes deep, warm, and holding something impossible to name locked on him. She walked over and knelt beside him, her large, scarred hand gently touching his cheek. The weight of it was heavier than most, but the touch held a softness Reuben never thought possible from such a warrior. Her voice was rough, weak, but steady. "I will give myself to you. Will you accept me?" Reuben froze. He had never heard words so blunt, so brutally honest. Nakana continued, forcing her words through the pain. "I want you to be the father of my child. She needs a father. I cannot protect her alone anymore." Reuben took a step back, his face tense. "You're saying this out of desperation. I don't want to take advantage." Nakana shook her head softly. Her breath wavered with pain, but her gaze was solid as stone. "This is not begging. This is choosing, and I choose you. Because you fought death for 3 nights straight for my daughter." Reuben clenched his fists, torn between compassion, fear, and a responsibility that felt heavier than the desert sky. From the bed, Tala gave a soft cough. then instinctively reached out and wrapped her little hand around Reuben's. In that moment, every trace of hesitation inside him seemed to melt into the sand. But all Reuben could whisper was, "Let's wait until Tala is fully well. Then we will talk." And with that answer, the fate of the three of them began to shift in a way that would never turn back. On the first morning after Tala's fever broke, sunlight streamed through the old wooden window, filling the room with an oddly comforting warmth. Reuben sat by her bed, quietly checking her steady breathing and the pink that had returned to her cheeks. She slept peacefully, her little hand still gripping his shirt as if afraid he might disappear. Across the room, Nakaana was trying to stand. Her massive frame trembled every time weight pressed down on her bruised legs, but her gaze remained fierce. She refused to let anyone see her weakness. Reuben instinctively rose and reached out to help, but she pulled back gently, keeping her distance. "You do not need to stand," Reuben said softly. Nakaana glanced around the simple room, then looked at him. Her voice was low and hoarse. "We need to talk." Reuben pulled out a chair and sat across from her. The air between them felt tight. Nakaana clenched her fists, the veins standing out on her thick forearms. She took a deep breath. "I know you think I said what I did last night because I was desperate. But I was not." Reuben pressed his lips together, saying nothing. She went on, "When Tala's fever hit, I thought I had lost my child. You held her. You kept her alive. You fought like a wolf guarding its pack. No one in my tribe ever did that for her." Her voice cracked. Then she began to tell him slowly, as if peeling back torn skin. Her husband, Hayuka, had been killed by a ruthless warrior from within their own tribe. That man was the younger brother of Kotokai. When Nakaana learned the truth and demanded justice, Kotokai, brother of the murderer, moved to silence her. They beat her, dragged her away in front of Tala. Wanhata, the tribe elder, and her own father, chose silence out of fear the tribe would fracture. After that, they tied Nakaana and her daughter together and cast them out into the desert to die. Reuben listened, his hands tightening, heart burning. At last, Nakaana looked him straight in the eyes and spoke with unwavering resolve. "You asked why I chose you. Because I saw that you were not afraid to die for Tala, and an Apache child needs that to survive." Reuben took a deep breath. "I do not want to take advantage of you. I do not want to pressure you. I only did what was right." Nakaana nodded. "Then, we will do it your way. No pressure, no chains, just an agreement to survive." She held out her large hand to him. "You protect Tala, protect me, and in return, I will do my part. Work, strength, and stand beside you when danger comes." Reuben looked at that hand, scarred, worn, strong, and placed his own in it. In that moment, an agreement was sealed. No ink, no vows, just two people of different blood, different pasts, bound by one purpose, to keep that little girl alive. Tala stirred in her sleep and whispered "Pa" in a dreamlike voice. Reuben turned and looked at her, a faint smile crossing his face. He did not know that in just a few days, this fragile agreement would be tested by the shadow of Kotokai, and by Nakana's entire tribe. That afternoon, the frontier sky was a dull gray, like an old blanket thrown over the world. Reuben was out in the yard splitting firewood, while Nakaana was around back, using her massive hands to repair a broken section of the fence. Tala sat on the porch steps, holding the crude wooden doll Reuben had just whittled for her, humming a soft tune from an Apache lullaby her mother used to sing. Then came the sound of hooves breaking the silence. First one, then two, then four, steady, unhurried, but full of intent. Reuben stopped mid-swing. A chill ran down his spine. He looked up and saw 4 figures emerging from the red dust. 3 Apache warriors and a 4th in front, tall, broad-shouldered, sitting on his horse like a man born to command. Kotokai. Even though they had never met, Reuben knew instantly. Tala sensed the danger first. She immediately ran toward her mother, clutching Nakana's leg. The giant woman froze, her hand tightening around a wooden beam so hard it creaked under the pressure. "Go inside, Tala," Reuben said softly, without turning around. But Tala did not move. Nakaana gently rested her hand on her daughter's head, as if anchoring her there, then stepped forward, slightly behind Reuben's shoulder. When the riders were about 20 paces from the house, Kotokai pulled the reins. His horse reared slightly, snorting foam. Kotokai glanced around the little homestead, the fence, the roof, the water barrels, as if appraising something far beneath his standards. Then his eyes landed on Nakana. "You made me work to find you, sister-in-law," he said in broken but clear English. His voice was like a blade scraping stone. "The tribe wants you back. You belong to us. Your child does too." Reuben felt Nakana tremble behind him, but her voice came steady and low. "I do not belong to you. Not ever again." The three warriors behind Kotokai stiffened. Hands moved to tomahawks. Their eyes scanned Reuben with a mix of disdain and caution. To them, he was just a scrawny white farmer not worth a second thought. Reuben took one more step forward, standing fully in the doorway now, his rifle resting in his hands. He did not raise it, but the barrel angled ever so slightly toward Kotokai. His voice was quiet, but it carried in the stillness of the yard. "She is a guest in my home, and the child," he nodded toward Tala, "is my daughter." The air went still. One of the warriors let out a dry, mocking laugh. "An Apache child, daughter of a pale twig like you. You must be dreaming." But Reuben said nothing. He just stared at Kotokai, unflinching. Tala, unable to understand all the grown-up words but hearing "my daughter," walked over slowly and wrapped her arms around Reuben's leg. Her tiny hands clung to his pants, a natural reflex. That gesture, small and wordless, said more than any argument could. Kotake's eyes darkened. "You are stealing the wife and child of an Apache," he growled. "The tribe's law does not forgive that." Reuben tightened his grip on the rifle. His heart pounded like war drums, but his voice remained calm. "I did not steal anyone. I saved 2 people from dying. If you wanted them back, you should have come 3 nights sooner." One of the warriors shifted, ready to charge, but Kotokai held up a hand. His voice turned colder as he spoke to Nakana. "You think he can protect you? One man against a tribe?" Nakana said nothing. She stepped half a pace closer, standing so her broad shoulders nearly eclipsed Reuben's entire body. Her silence was her answer. In that moment, perhaps for the first time in his life, Kotokai felt truly rejected by both a woman and a skinny white man. He pressed his lips together. His eyes flashed with rage. "Fine," Kotokai said slowly. "If he claims her as his daughter, then I will return. With others, and next time, there will be no talking." He yanked the reins. The 4 horses turned in the red dust and rode away with heavy hoofbeats. None of them looked back. Only the wind remained whistling through the fence, carrying the scent of dust and the warning of a coming storm. Tala looked up at Reuben. "Pa," she whispered. He placed his hand gently on her head, his eyes still fixed on the horizon where the riders had vanished. "I appreciate your being here. If this story reminded you of old days, dusty evenings, hoofbeats echoing in your heart, subscribe to my channel, so every day we can sit down together, and I will tell you another story from the West." In the days following the confrontation with Kotokai, Reuben's little homestead fell into a fragile kind of peace, like a thin sheet of glass that could shatter with just a tap. But sometimes, even that kind of delicate peace is enough to make a man feel alive again. Tala recovered with surprising speed. She ran all over the yard, her tiny feet kicking up dust every time she chased the old hen hiding near the fence. Every time she tripped, she stood right back up, brushed off her dress, and beamed at Reuben like death had never come near her just days before. "Pa, look at this." Tala held up the wooden doll Reuben had whittled by hand, her eyes shining as she showed him a heart-shaped stone she had just found. Reuben laughed a sound he could not even remember the last time he had made. From behind the stable, Nakana bent down and lifted a long plank of wood nearly as tall as Reuben with just one hand. She placed it into the new fence and knocked it into place with 2 solid thuds. That strength, that sound, it was something Reuben would never admit out loud, but he felt safe having it around. Not because she was protecting him, but because she had chosen to be here. Even though her wounds still ached, Nakana kept working hard, cutting feed, patching the roof, fixing the stable door. Reuben tried more than once to stop her, but she would only give him a simple look and say, "I'm holding up my part of the deal." In the afternoons, they sat together on the porch. Reuben carved more toys for Tala. Nakana sat beside him, silent but not distant. The wind played through her long black hair, carrying the scent of wood smoke and warm dust into the glowing red sky of sunset. Tala crouched low, drawing circles in the dirt, then looked up and asked, "Pa, Mama, is this place home?" Reuben froze, while Nakaana lowered her head slightly, her eyes suddenly soft like water. "Just for now," Reuben said quietly, trying to keep his voice steady. But Tala frowned, looking at him as if she did not quite understand. "And Nakaana?" She looked at him a moment longer than she needed to. That night, while Reuben was fixing the stable door, he caught sight of Nakaana standing on the porch, staring into the darkness. Her enormous frame stood bold under the moonlight, her broad shoulders filling the doorway. "Are you worried they'll come back?" Reuben asked. "No. I am certain they will," Nakaana answered without hesitation. Then she turned to him. "You know I cannot run anymore. If they take me, there will be no one left to protect Tala." Reuben tightened the rope in his hand. "I will protect her." Nakaana looked at him for a long time. The deep black in her eyes no longer held the guarded distance of those first days. Now there was trust, and something else, something gentler, harder to name. "I know," she said, her voice low, like the echo of a distant drum. "And that's the only thing that lets me sleep." Far off, in the night, the howl of a wolf stretched across the land. Nakaana looked toward it, then spoke in a whisper, like a prophecy. "Peace will not last long, Reuben." And he knew she was right, because at any moment, not far from here, Kotokai could be gathering men, sharpening blades, and waiting for the blackest night to return. But this time, Reuben had chosen his side, and he would not back down. That morning, the air was strangely still. The crows were silent. The wind did not blow. Reuben was tying a bundle of hay when Nakaana suddenly stopped, tilting her head ears sharp like the warrior born of mountain and forest she was. "Reuben." Her voice was low, taut like a bowstring. He heard it right after. Hoofbeats, steady, slow, but heavy, like a funeral drum. Not 3. Not 4. Many. Tala ran into the yard, but Nakaana immediately stretched out one powerful arm, blocking her. Within minutes, 7 Apache warriors appeared beyond the fence. They did not shout. They did not raise weapons to the sky. They just stood, watching silently, but each gaze felt like a cold blade pressed to the throat. In the center of them was a man with silver, streaked ash-gray hair, shoulders draped in a reddish, brown deerskin cloak. Elder Wanhata, Nakaana's father. His face was lined with deep wrinkles, but his eyes were sharp as spear points. There was no anger in them, only authority. "Nakaana," he said in a deep, clear voice. "My daughter." Nakaana did not bow her head. She stood tall, nearly a full head taller than her father, positioned firmly in front of Reuben and Tala. "Why have you come?" Her voice was steel. Wanhata tightened the reins, his eyes drifting over Reuben as if he were just a pebble on the road. "The tribe demands your return. You are the promised wife of Kotokai." "I am not his wife," Nakaana answered, each word hitting the ground like a stone. A warrior behind Wanhata stepped forward, voice sharp. "You belong to us. You defy the laws of the tribe." "What law?" Nakaana snapped, eyes blazing. "The law that protects the man who murdered my husband? The law that allowed his brother to beat me in front of my child?" The air thickened like fog. Wanhata closed his eyes and sighed. A few warriors exchanged glances. They clearly knew the truth, but none had ever spoken it aloud. Reuben rested his hand on the rifle but did not lift it. Instead, he stepped forward to stand beside Nakaana, a quiet declaration. Wanhata saw it. "You," he said, pointing straight at Reuben, "have stolen my daughter and my grandchild from the tribe." "I did not steal anyone," Reuben replied. "When I found them, they were nearly dead." A warrior barked. "If she does not want to return, then why is she here? Why is she standing beside you?" Nakaana did not hesitate. She stepped forward half a pace, unfastened part of her deerskin top, and revealed long, bruised scars, welts from whips, rope burns, bruises so deep the flesh had turned black. Tala cowered behind Reuben, trembling slightly. Nakaana looked every man in the eye, then spoke. "This is why I will not go back. This is Kotokai's gift, and this is what the tribe expects me to forget." No one said another word. One warrior lowered his head. Another exhaled heavily. as if cursing himself for ever believing Kotokai. Only Wanhata remained unmoved, calm to a chilling degree. "Even so," he said coldly, "the tribe still needs you. You carry my blood. You are our strongest woman warrior." Nakana clenched her fists. Her voice was low and resolute. "I will not return. Not while the man who killed Hayuka walks free. Not while Kotokai roams the village without punishment." Wanhata remained silent for a long time. Reuben could feel Tala gripping his pant leg tighter, as if sensing something terrible was about to happen. At last, the elder lifted his head and declared, "Then we will take you back whether you agree or not." 6 warriors moved in unison, hands landing on their weapons. Nakana and Reuben stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder. In that moment, no one in the yard could see the line between Apache and white man anymore, only a mother, a man, and a child standing against a tribe ready to use force to reclaim what they believed was theirs. The war of words was over. The shadow of violence had truly fallen upon the homestead. The air on the homestead cracked like dry wood meeting flame. 6 Apache warriors stood in a half-circle, hands resting on tomahawk handles and short bows slung across their backs. Elder Wanhata remained mounted on his horse, his gaze cold and heavy, as if every choice had already been made long before. Reuben knew one wrong move, one quick breath, and blood would spill. Behind him, Tala began to cry softly, but Nakana placed her large hand gently on the girl's head, holding her still. Reuben could hear the trembling breath of the child, each sound a blade keeping him sharp in the eye of the storm. Wanhata spoke, his voice deep and cold like stone at the bottom of a lake. "Nakana, you have no right to defy the tribe. You have no right to choose this white man over your own blood." Nakana stepped forward, her shadow nearly blocking all the light ahead of Reuben. "I did not choose him over the tribe," she said, her voice like a war drum. "I chose the truth. I chose Tala." The warrior to the left growled, "Truth? Your husband died in battle." "No one did anything," Nakana growled back, her voice low and thunderous. "My husband was killed from behind, and the one who did it was Kotokai's brother, and every one of you knows it." Several gazes faltered. One warrior shivered, his eyes darting away. Wanhata closed his eyes, as if hearing an old song he did not wish to face again. The past should not be reopened. "To protect the tribe's unity, you must return." Reuben stepped forward. For the first time, he stood between 2 laws, 2 worlds, and had to choose where he belonged. He spoke slowly, every word clear. "She's not going back. The person you want to drag away is a mother. And that little girl," he pointed at Tala, "has no one else but her and me." A warrior scoffed. "You think you can protect them, white man? You, alone, against us?" Reuben said nothing. He simply raised his rifle without shaking, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Nakana glanced at him. In her eyes, for the first time, there was something new. Respect. And maybe a hint of pride. One brash warrior stepped forward, drawing his tomahawk. But before he could move again, Reuben spoke, his voice sharp, like a blade honed through sleepless nights. "If you want to take her, you'll have to step over my body." Tala let out a sob. Nakana clutched her daughter's hand tighter. Those words froze the entire yard. Wanhata stared at Reuben for a long time, so long that Reuben could hear his own heartbeat, and the warm breath of Tala behind him. At last, the elder spoke. "You think you can change our laws?" Reuben did not back down an inch. "I'm not changing anything. I'm just protecting my home." The word home made Nakana flinch just slightly, as if it touched something deep inside her. Something she had been trying to hold together ever since she was cast into the desert. Wanhata slowly raised a hand. A small gesture, but the 6 warriors stopped. Not a single one moved forward. The wind blew, carrying the dry whisper of dust, stretching the silence until it hurt to breathe. Then the elder spoke, heavily but clearly. "If my daughter will not climb onto the horse herself, then I will not take her by force. Not in front of this child." He glanced at Tala for the first time. There was a flicker of softness in his eyes. "But I will return. The law has not changed." He pulled the reins. The 7 warriors turned and rode away from the fence. But before they vanished into the distance, Wanhata looked back, his eyes locked on Reuben through the red dust, and said, "Today, you win because I would not have a child see blood. But next time, you will need more than courage to survive." The horses galloped off, leaving the yard buried in a silence heavy as iron. Tala clung to Reuben's leg. Nakana looked at him for a long moment, then softly said, "You've stepped onto a road with no way back." Reuben answered, voice low and firm, "Then I'll walk it to the end for you and Tala." And for the first time, Nakana bowed her head to a man. The next morning, the sky was a pale yellow like sunlight cut in half. A cold wind swept through, signaling that something was coming. Reuben had been up since early. He lit the fire, checked the rifles, cleaned the stable, but really, he was just waiting, tense as a bowstring on the edge of snapping. Nakana stood on the porch, her massive frame still, eyes gazing far down the trail. Tala clung to her mother's leg, holding her small wooden doll, her tiny shadow stretching long beneath the two figures. Then came the sound of hooves, not heavy like yesterday's, not the rhythm of 7 warriors ready for violence. Today, the sound was slower, more solemn like footsteps in a ritual. Elder Wanhata had returned, this time with only 2 elder warriors. No bows, no spears. Reuben placed a hand on his rifle, but Nakana touched his shoulder gently. "They are not here to fight today," she said. The elder stopped exactly 10 paces away. He dismounted slowly, like a man carrying a weight heavier than his own body. "Reuben." He spoke the name for the first time. Reuben did not answer. He simply stood tall, ready to face whatever came. Wanhata looked at Nakana for a long time. There was no anger in his gaze now, no authority, only the quiet weariness of a father seeing something he could no longer hold on to. "My daughter," he said, voice soft but clear. "I believed protecting the tribe mattered more than protecting the individuals within it. But yesterday, I saw where I was wrong." Nakana took a deep breath, but said nothing. Wanhata turned his gaze to Tala, the little girl trying to hide behind Reuben's leg but still peeking out. "This child," he said, "has seen things no child ever should. I will not let her see more." Then he spoke words none of them had dared to hope for. "From this day forward, Nakana is released from the tribe's marriage law." Reuben froze. His heart pounded. Nakana nearly buckled. No wound had ever weighed as much as the burden she had carried for months. Before anyone could respond, Wanhata continued, "And the child, Tala, belongs to whoever she chooses." Both Reuben and Nakana held their breath. Wanhata stepped closer, then knelt, speaking with a gentleness that surprised them all. "Tala, who do you choose? The tribe? Or this man?" Tala looked at her mother, then at Reuben. She gripped his hand tightly, her small voice steady as a knife-cutting stone. "Pa." One word, but it was enough to change everything. Wanhata closed his eyes and nodded. He turned to Reuben. "From now on, no warrior may harm you or the child. You will protect her as your own blood." Reuben nodded, holding Tala's hand tighter. Nakana stepped forward to face her father. They stood in silence for a long moment. At last, Wanhata spoke, nearly in a whisper. "I've lost a daughter who was once a warrior, but maybe I now see a mother, stronger than any warrior I have ever known." Nakana said nothing. She only bowed deeply before him, a gesture Reuben had never seen her make before. Then the elder climbed back onto his horse. Before riding off, he spoke one final time, casting his words into the wind like both a blessing and a warning. "Live in a way that honors the choice you made." The group disappeared over the hill. Tala ran into the middle of the yard, arms wide open, calling, "Home." Nakana walked up beside Reuben. She placed her large, scarred hand on his cheek just like that first time. But now there was no desperation, only a true choice. "Yes," she said, her voice low and warm. "This is our home, and on that wild frontier, 3 people of different blood. My friend, out in that harsh borderland, it is not blood that makes a family but choice." Reuben, a poor farmer, stood tall between 2 worlds to protect a woman left behind and a child who had nearly lost everything. And Nakana, even after betrayal, found the courage to trust the kindness of a stranger. They did not find each other by fate, but by a shared refusal to walk into darkness. They chose light, and they chose each other. It has been an honor to share this story with you, dear listeners of Wild West Storytelling. Wherever you are, I wish you peace and happiness. I love you all. Let me know what you thought of this story. Drop a comment below. Press 1 if you enjoyed this tale. And do not forget to subscribe to the channel, so you will not miss the next dramatic tale from the Wild West.